What troops will we got this week? How did Tukey go this morning?
Took's okay. Dan Curry's not. Dan Curry's out, so there'll be 6 changes this week, we look like. Probably 4 of them forced. And another couple have a fitness test in Sydney at this stage, which I won't say who they are. But,
how's Prestia, or is he one of them?
What's
he on this week?
Gion looks like he'll be okay. He ran today for the first time, so it looks like he'll be okay.
Is it any sort of concern with him? He sort of seems like he's playing, just getting there.
Yeah, well, he's more carrying things than probably what any other player is. But no one talks about him. So he hurt his ankle last week as well. So he's a pretty tough cookie. So I think he realised where we're at as far as troops available. So he's one that's putting himself out there.
What's been your message this week? Obviously, the past fortnight's been just very disappointing.
Yeah, I think obviously Geelong was disappointing, but last week's first half was pretty good, really, with effort. I thought after what happened the previous week, the way we attacked it, the way we went into last week's game, I think you measure really guys' commitment and their intent is how they start games. So obviously they were in a good headspace to tackle the game. Then after half time it sort of dropped away a bit. It becomes a tipping point at some stage, I think. So we just got to hang in games for longer and be able to persevere and persist. So that's what we've spoken about. Obviously we're going there to win the game. So that's we're going to try some different things and do some different things the way we go about it. But certainly they've trained well again. So.
What have you made of GWS so far, Rocket? And do you feel like there's a bit of rivalry there, given the 2 expansion clubs?
No, I don't. You guys do. Keep mentioning it. I think they're 2 different clubs. Really, if anyone's going to be successful in the competition, I prefer them to anyone else. I've got a great affinity with Leon, who's under me at the Bulldogs, and he's a terrific coach. Cal Ward, Ryan Griffin, a few other guys. Heath Shaw's involved with the Collingwood. So, I think there was different. I think that there was different setup rules. I mean, they had different rules to us. They've gone about it differently, and good luck to them. Hope they do well.
Rocket, I guess this time of year you always kind of see the comparisons of the 2 lists by everyone. Where do you feel the list is at the moment for the Suns? Do you think it really got a good bunch of good boys there?
Well, it's hard to judge with obviously some key guys out. No, there's certainly some areas we need to improve. There's no doubt about that. And I said at the start of the year, we're reasonably pleased where we're at, but we lack depth in certain areas, and that gets exposed when you get some injuries. So we're obviously going to keep turning list over. We need to draft well, and we need to trade well. So there's certainly some areas we need to improve.
Will Gary play more in the midfield this week?
Yeah, he will. Yeah, he'll play in the midfield.
And there's obviously a lot of commentary around his form, particularly recently. I mean, earlier this week, everywhere you turn to, there's someone commenting on how he's going. What's his demeanour been like around the club this week? No, good.
He's been up and about at training. Probably most Tuesdays he hasn't trained, but he trained this Tuesday. So the indications are that he's got over any humps as far as his body. He seems to be up and about. He's in certainly a positive light this week.
Have expectations been too high on Gaz? Do you think Rocket, given he's 32, he's come back from a series of serious injuries? Is it too much to expect him to come back to absolute career best form, given his age and the injuries?
The only thing I think I can answer that is that when he got back from his shoulder mid-year last year, before he did his knee, he was 2 best on grounds and he was 2nd best on ground. So the serious injury to his shoulder, I think he's over that. As I said, he keeps. There's no strap in there, so I don't know why people keep mentioning that. Really, it's been nearly 2 years since that happened. So most players recover pretty well from a shoulder after 12 months. So I think he did, and he showed that last year. So he's just got a couple of new knocks this year. So and a few niggles that he's carried in, but his expectations of him are going to be as a captain more than as a player from our point of view. He set such a high bar compared to mere mortals in the competition, so now he's been judged against that. So probably his own expectations, probably his own downfall at times.
What did you make of the Tuesday's action with Lee and the chairman?
Oh, I thought the chairman was terrific. I thought showed the passion for the club, which our players have got as well. So I can rest assured the supporters that there's a lot of passion within the group, within the club. That just we try to keep it under lid the first 3 weeks we were able to, then we've dropped off. So, but I think Tony's passion for the club and the Gold Coast as an area was fantastic. I think it showed that we're in here for the long haul, which we see ourselves as well.
What are you expecting? I mean, this might be a bit of a broad question, but what do you expect from your team this week, Rocket, given what's happened in the past?
Well, I think we showed it the first half last week, Michael. That's what we expect. That effort that we brought the first half, the intent to put pressure on, the intent to get into the contest, and all the figures indicated that. At start of the third quarter was disappointing. Then we obviously trailed off a bit with fatigue. So that's what we expect to. What we had the first half last week is to have that for a longer period.
Do you think the reduced interchanges or the rotations, do you think when you have injuries it hurts things more now? Yeah, it might do. Especially if you lose two. I think you lose two, it becomes a real, especially early in the game you lose two, can become an unfair. And I think the other thing that the AFL have got to look at, and clubs really hasn't bitten them yet, is the stronger interpretation of concussion, the protocol that goes through now, and that's good for the AFL to do it. Players are getting ruled out quicker, the game. So I've thought about it a bit, and I know what I'm going to explain can be convoluted, but I would think that a sub being in, having four and a sub, but that sub can only come on for a concussion player, or if a player is injured, and the way to beat any tricks around that is the player they replace cannot play the next week. So in our situation last week, we would have a player to come on for a Rosa or a Sexton who just couldn't come back on. So if you want to give a player with cramp, well, you don't replace him, because that's your bad luck. Unless you do replace him, he can't play the next week. So that way, you're actually going to mitigate against any unfair advantage with the player number.
Do you think that could open up the whole can again? It sounded like at the end of last year that even the clubs were a bit sick of the sub, and the sub didn't know if he was going to get a run.
Well, the sub can play in the seconds. The sub can play. So therefore, he's really only there. So at the old sub rule, if you played on a Friday night or a Saturday, then he couldn't play in the reserves next week. So he's really picked in the reserves. But if you play on a Sunday, he can play half in the reserves if you want to play to give him some game time. Then if you're playing the Saturday and your reserves are playing the Sunday and he doesn't get, I don't know, the cut-off point, just making it up, say no more than a quarter of footy, he can go and play in the seconds. It's really only there for an injury. And I can see it becoming more and more prevalent, the concussion, that the AFL are going to be really strong on the concussion interpretation. And some teams will lose 2 a week with concussion. And that will happen. There's no doubt it will happen. And that's fine. And that's the way we've got to go about it, because we've got to protect the players. But by the same token, it's going to be unfair on teams.